Hubbard on as a guest. You may know her as the Food Allergy Counselor on Instagram.
An anxious mind overestimates risk and underestimates the ability to navigate the situation or do it safely. Yeah, people's first instinct is to say, it's totally fine, don't worry, don't worry. If that worked, we would all feel better. It's okay to worry. So can we at least entertain, connect with, and think about other possible outcomes of a situation?
Welcome back to EpiPod. Danielle's had anaphylactic food allergies her entire life.
And Sarah is a food allergy mom to 2 kiddos.
Managing this invisible health condition can feel so isolating.
Do you also feel like you have a degree in overthinking?
If you're nodding your head like me, then you're in good company.
Let's get you off that allergy island right now with people who get it.
Ready to dive in?
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, Danielle.
You guys, today we have an episode that we have been looking forward to for a while now. We are having Tamara Hubbard on as a guest. You may know her as the Food Allergy Counselor on Instagram.
Yeah, we name drop her all the time on this podcast, and finally we get to have her on. This episode is amazing. Also, if you hear my child, the parents are going to relate to this if you just heard him screaming in the background. I mean, he's home from school because when do kids actually go to school? I swear, I'm like, they're always off for something. Anyway, so I'm trying to juggle like all of the things today. So sorry for that interruption. But
also,
back to Tamara.
Also a special guest of Ethan, Sarah's youngest. No.
Yeah.
Today we're diving into uncertainty and ding, ding, ding. One of our most asked questions and emails that we get. Please do an episode on this. How to help your food allergy child have a healthier relationship with food.
Right, which starts with yourself having a healthier relationship with food and just dealing with your own anxiety. So we get into all of that. I learned so much in this episode, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. But before we get into it, let's tell everybody a little bit more about her, because she is extremely qualified and has a lot coming up too to look forward to in terms of like learning from her. So yeah.
Tamara is a licensed clinical professional counselor. She was trained in marriage and family therapy, and she has over 20 years of experience. She also founded the Food Allergy Counseling Directory as a professional therapist network. And that's actually how I found my therapist.
Yes. And in her private practice, Tamara helps allergic and non-allergic clients, especially parents, develop their just right balance between the overwhelm and living in alignment with their values, which, yeah, it's the struggle we all deal with. She is also the author of May Contain Anxiety, Managing the Overwhelm on Parenting Children with Food Allergies, and that comes out this fall. So much to talk about. Let's jump right in.
Hi, Tamara. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, ladies, for having me. I appreciate it.
We are so excited to chat with you. It has been a long time coming. The listeners, if you recall, I always talk about like how I found my food allergy therapist and how much she means to me, and it was through Tamara's website. So it gives me full body chills. Just it's a full circle moment over here.
Well, the full body chills are equal because the whole reason why I do the work that I do and put out the resources that I do is because of people like you who need the support. And so when I hear that from people, it just totally warms my heart and keeps me going. And I'm also an allergy mom too. One of my sons has food allergies. So yeah.
Yeah. So we could talk to you about 100 different topics, truly. Yeah. I mean, there's so many elements. Danielle and I always talk about how food allergies are so gray, that there's always these nuances, and that's kind of what trips a lot of us up. I know as an allergy mom, for me, this uncertainty that clouds everything in food allergy life is brutal, to be honest with you, because I'm a pretty like type A person. If you tell me 1 + 1 = 2, like I'm there. I know how to handle this situation. But when you tell me you can't tell me the answer or why things happen, then all of a sudden my chest is a little tighter, and I'm pretty anxious about that. And so what do you find just in general with clients or when you talk to people? What do you find is like the hardest thing, or the thing that people struggle with most?
Uncertainty is a huge one, because the thing is whether it's food allergies or not, we can't be 100% certain about anything in life. I mean, life is full of uncertainties. especially when you're living with food allergies. So that lack of knowing exactly the outcome of something or knowing, the predictability piece sometimes, it really triggers a lot of anxiety. And so I always start off by telling people, like, feeling anxiety is not a bad thing. It feels uncomfortable. We don't want to feel it, just like we don't want to feel grief. We don't want to feel sadness or anger sometimes too. But it's a normal human emotion that we all experience. And the presence of anxiety doesn't always mean that something isn't safe. And that's something our brain immediately wants to go to, right? It wants to go. Ironically, our brains are not as evolved as we think from the caveman times. Like, they had to scan everything to make sure that they weren't going to be killed or they could get food. So our brain works a little overtime, and I call it being an unhelpful friend. And so an anxious mind, which many of us have, tends to be more anxious. And so that anxiety gets triggered right away by the hint of something that could be uncertain. But uncertainty is on a spectrum, right? Uncertainty and risk are on a spectrum, and not everything is completely unsafe because it feels uncertain. And that's a huge thing to highlight.
Yeah, but when you look at food allergies, I think a lot of people listening are probably like, but it is unsafe.
But I'm like screaming over here, like, but.
Yeah. And I know you know this. You're a food allergy mom too. But you think you go to the playground and that should be a safe thing. But wait a second, that kid's eating peanut butter and jelly and then sliding down the same slide my kid is. Or, we don't actually know if the manufacturer told the truth on this label. There's so much about being in the world with food allergies that actually can be risky. So how do you navigate that?
1,000%. And as a therapist, I will never tell somebody, we can guarantee there won't be risk. I also, as a therapist who works with allergy parents and those managing food allergies, will not delve into the medical aspects and say, like, hey, here is what's safe for you and not safe for you. I always help them develop questions to go back to their allergist or their allergy care team to get that information, because medical is outside of my scope of practice. And so I don't want to give them information that's not correct, especially because everybody's food allergy profile is different, right? And so that's one of the key things. I don't want people overgeneralizing just because we have the same allergies as somebody else. We have to live in the same way. We have to take the same restrictions. How we manage our food allergies is very personalized. And so we all get similar guidance, right? There's certain things to do to keep yourself safe. We have our epinephrine with us. We have our emergency action plans. We know to read labels. But how we apply that to our lives really needs to be personalized. And it's all based on a variety of things, like what matters to us and all of that. So if we go back to the example of the park, the other piece to this is, again, going back to the idea that risk is not all or nothing. Our brain, our anxious mind, is going to tell us that any little bit of risk is 100% unsafe. But that's not true. And I don't usually like to get into debating truths in my practice, because we could be there all day, every day, forever. But the reality is that we do have to live a little bit in the gray. But we do that with taking calculated risks, right? So that starts off with, have you had a conversation with your care team about how to assess risk for your specific profile of allergens and allergies, or your child's allergens and allergies? We have to understand, so being near a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, our mind is going to tell us that's completely unsafe. Avoid at all costs. It's 100% risky. The reality of it is, based, for most people, I'm not going to say all, but for most people, based on research and based on, real life examples, you probably are near your allergens more than you realize, and you probably have been safe. And so again, the language I like to give is it safe, safe enough, or unsafe? And those are things that we have to help from the very beginning. Like, even if a mom has been, or somebody's been living with food allergies for years, okay, have you had the conversation with your allergist about how to figure out what's safe enough, and not safe for you or your child? And if you haven't, then we need to have you go back and have that conversation, because that's how you take that information and help assess risk, because we cannot be 100% certain on anything.
Yeah. That made me think too. First of all, I love those 3 buckets. I feel like when Danielle and I have talked in the past, she's so good, and probably this stems from you talking to your therapist, Danielle, who you found through Tamara. But I feel like you often talk about buckets and how to like put things from your brain into these buckets, and I think that visual is really helpful for a lot of people. And certainly, I've never thought of it that way, but I love that so much. I talk a lot about calculated risk too, not from a therapy mindset, obviously, because I'm not a therapist, but for me, that's what's helped me a lot is figuring out what kind of calculated risks I can take and still give my child like this full life that he deserves. And yet sometimes, choosing, well, maybe we don't do this thing because either the risk is too high or I just need a break. Like I just need to not be anxious today. And I feel like that's okay too, right? I mean, do you have to weigh that option as well?
1,000%. I say we have to use the F word in therapy, and I don't mean that F word. I mean the flexibility, right? I know my clients are always like, what? And I'm like, well, we can use that word too, but I mean flexibility, right? So some days if we just can't handle the stress, right? Maybe we've got a lot going on in our personal life. It's been a rough week at work. If our kids are acting up and we're like, this is just not the day or the scenario that I want to have extra risk and I can handle it well in the way I want to. I talk about it as, can I show up the way I want to as the person or as the mom that I want to be in that moment? And if I feel like I can't, it's okay to be flexible and say, today's not the day to deal with that challenge. But I like what you said about how you want to have a balance, right? You want to not be overly restrictive with experiences just because you feel anxious about it. And again, an anxious mind overestimates risk and underestimates the ability to navigate the situation or do it safely. So inherently, when we see an allergen, we're going 5-alarm fire, totally unsafe, can't be near it. We have to calm and ground in that moment, right? Not make any decisions in that very moment, because the decision is going to be, let's go. And sometimes that's the decision we're going to make based on what we just said. Like, it's just not the day to do that, and that's okay. But when we're doing that all the time in every situation, that's where we lose balance for ourselves, for our kids, for our families. And so we need to be able to, again, recall the stuff we've talked with our allergists about to assess risk, and especially for things like non-ingestion, right? Being near allergens, touching something where someone might have touched something, right? Knowing that information, recalling that information, calming ourselves by just simply taking a deep breath, right? Because that kind of helps our body and our minds start to calm a little so we can think a little more clearly. And then going back to, can I navigate this in a way that's safe enough where we can stay, we can enjoy this? You may be completely focused on the allergen as a parent or as somebody managing food allergies, but you are going to be uncomfortable. That's the other piece of this, is that when you do something outside of your comfort zone, you are going to be uncomfortable. But that discomfort doesn't always mean something is unsafe. Anxiety and discomfort can be there because something's new, uncertain, unpredictable, unknown, important to you, right? So we have to remind ourselves that anxiety doesn't always equal bad or unsafe.
I feel like for me, this is my question is about the pandemic. Like for me, the pandemic was a before and after event. Like pre-pandemic, that version of me had those 3 buckets on lock. Like I was living la vida loca and very safely. Like I was not taking crazy risks, but I had a very open world. My allergy was like 3% of me. And now post-pandemic, I think because I was just programmed for living with family who had health conditions, like we really had to be on lockdown, like capital L lockdown, for so long that it narrowed down to 2 buckets. It was unsafe and safe because of COVID. And then that like reprogrammed my brain for allergies as well. And of course, like I was like, oh my gosh, that you can't go to the ER because there are people in the hallway with COVID. Like, so all of a sudden, and then I was like, oh my gosh, it's been 5 years of 2 buckets, safe and unsafe. And in a world of gray that is having a severe food allergy, for me, multiple, there's not a lot that is 100% safe. So then you're in this fight or flight of not safe about everything. So have you seen, I thought I was like completely off my rocker for feeling that way. And when I started vocalizing that in therapy, my therapist was like, this is extremely common. So can you talk a little bit about what you've seen in that and how, whether it's a food allergy parent or food allergy adult, some tactics, and I can share some that have been helpful for me, but having the 3 buckets again, being able to live in uncertainty, being able to be willing to be uncomfortable, to grow that sort of resilience.
So as you were speaking, my mind was going, oh my God, please tell her that she's not, this is normal. So there's actually research out there that from the pandemic, food allergy anxiety decreased for a lot of parents. And I imagine it was the same for those managing food allergies. Again, this was just a study focused on parents. And so that was because obviously what you said, like we were home, we were locked down, we weren't navigating real life stuff. Generalized anxiety kind of behaviors and feelings and even diagnoses went up though, because things felt really scary and unsafe and uncertain as a whole. And so some of that is carried through. The other thing I see because of that is because, even beyond just the lockdown period, right? People who have had family members who were sick, or just they felt like they wanted to keep kind of using those stricter protocols for a longer period of time, did not get to practice food allergy management strategies. And when we don't practice things, it's like a language. We get rusty with it, right? And we lose our confidence. Like, don't drop me in Spain and ask me to speak Spanish for my 7th and 8th grade Spanish. I can't do it because I didn't practice, right? If I had practiced all these years, okay, fine. It's the same thing, because there were years, it sounds like, where you didn't practice food allergy management. You didn't step outside of your comfort zone in ways that would challenge you to say, okay, I'm anxious, but I can still do this safely. Use that 3rd bucket, create that 3rd bucket. Then it reinforced the fear, and now it's kind of just become like a really rigid thing. And so tips is just to start small. And so 2 things, self-compassion, right? I want people to talk to themselves kinder. The thing I'll say about self-compassion is, think about what you say to yourself when you're struggling with a situation such as this. Like, I can't seem to get out of those 2 buckets back to the 3 buckets of like safe enough is something I can choose to. Be kind to yourself. If you wouldn't say it to a friend, don't say it to yourself. So when you start beating yourself about that stuff, it's not helpful. We are not actually motivated by, being hard on ourselves. In some situations, maybe like if we're an athlete or something and we want to, be driven, but research shows that we need to be kinder to ourselves with what we say to ourselves during struggle, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, start small, right? You're not going to get back to that same place overnight. And so it's just being willing to be uncomfortable, using the coping strategies that you have to get through that discomfort, to show yourself that you can actually do things that feel uncomfortable and uncertain, that are safe enough, and you can still enjoy that experience. And so those would be the 2 starting points, practical things I would start with. And again, I think it means going back to your allergist post-pandemic now and saying, hey, I'm anxious about this. Like, I'm overestimating risk now because of this whole thing. Can we have another conversation, or maybe it's the first, about how do I assess what's safe enough, and absolutely not safe for me and my set of allergies?
Yeah, that is so helpful, especially the compassion piece.
Yeah.
It is so easy to.
Oh my gosh.
Like, if I said 1% of what I say to myself to my community and friends, like, I would have 0 friends. So, it's just crazy, like, how I consider myself an excellent friend, but to others, and a terrible friend to myself. But it's like, how do you bridge that gap? Something that I get asked a lot and we get written to a lot about is like having a healthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
And I'm the first to say, like, I don't have a healthy relationship with food. Are you kidding me? Like, especially post-pandemic, like, I jokingly said I have a war on food and that I hate food. And that is not true. I just have really been struggling with my relationship and my allergy, but a lot more than I used to, high school, college, post-grad. Yeah. And it totally is I'm trying to work my way back to there, but a lot of parents will reach out and be like, how do I instill these things in my kids? Like, oh, I see that you go on bachelorette trips, or that you're going to these weddings or whatever, and I hope my child can grow up and have a healthy relationship with food. And I'm like, fun fact, I don't have a healthy relationship with food whatsoever. But that's something that is always coming up. So do you have, I'd love to chat a little bit about that. And I know, Sarah, as the parent, I'm sure you're arm wrestling with, as your boys are growing,
Yes, it's
trying
getting
all the
trickier,
things.
for sure. Yeah.
It's a really important question, and I think when we live with food allergies, our world is pretty much focused on food allergies, right? The things that are unsafe for us. And so one starting point I would say is to not always just focus on the things that are unsafe. And I know that can feel hard, right? It's not like I'm saying don't ever focus on your food allergies. Obviously focus on your food allergies and making sure that you or your kids know what is unsafe. But I think we get so laser focused that if we talk to them about foods that are safe, or we talk about other things, they're going to forget the stuff they can't eat. It doesn't always need to be focused on food allergies. And in fact, I would argue that we shouldn't 100% always be focused on food allergies, because we don't want ourselves or our kids to just identify themselves as somebody with a food allergy, right? That can lead them into more of an unhealthy relationship with their foods. So it starts off with things like, I think I shared with you guys before the show that I used to have a podcast too. And so when I had a dad on, and he was talking about how he was completely overwhelmed when his son was first diagnosed, had tons of food allergies, a really long list of things. And he went to this support group meeting, and the support group leader said something really important that stuck with him, that I actually share in my upcoming book. But it is that, don't just make a list of things and talk about the things you can't eat. Literally make a list of all the different foods you and your child can't eat. Combinations of foods, specific foods, food groups, right? Your list of things you have to avoid may be really long, but just seeing on a piece of paper the things you can eat kind of shifts your perspective from just focusing on I can't to I can. So it's something like that. It's also modeling okay, if you're feeling uncertain about this food and maybe some anxiety showing up, right? Okay, go through our checklist. Have we read the label? Have we talked with our allergist about this is safe enough for us to eat or totally safe for us to eat, doesn't include our allergen? Okay, my body's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. I feel that way sometimes when I'm eating something new, but we can still do it. We can still eat it and make a new relationship with foods, right? Make food time fun again, right? So have fun with foods, get them involved in baking things, So there are lots of things we can do, but it starts with modeling. It starts with not just always focusing intensely on food allergies. Yes, we have to keep safe and keep that as part of our focus, but it shouldn't be 100% of the focus.
Yeah. I know on my Instagram page, I have a lot of people reaching out and saying, I know now that my kid is 6, 7, whatever years old, that they are anxious, and they feel a lot of guilt because they feel like their anxiety, because they know they're struggling hard with it, they believe and think that their anxiety has rubbed off on their child. And no parent, obviously, you and I are both parents, Tamara, nobody wants to give your kid the gift of anxiety. We want them to be free and feel, calm in situations, even when we're not. I know for me, there's many times when I've been at a birthday party where things aren't particularly safe and I'm screaming inside, but I'm doing my best to just kind of smile and nod with my kid and make sure they're not touching the thing, but I'm trying so hard, and it's been a goal of mine to kind of keep that to myself. And I do feel like it's paid off. The other side of that coin is I don't feel like Graham, my 6-year-old, almost 7-year-old, is super anxious. But at the same time, parents are like, but how do I not make them anxious when they have to know that this is unsafe? They cannot have this, or they have to advocate for themselves when they're in school and I'm not there. So is there a trick to finding that perfect balance? And my second question would be, if somebody feels like they've already screwed up, they have already not done the things that you're about to say, and they feel like they have ruined their kid in terms of food allergy anxiety, what could be done?
Yeah, I'm going to back into that question. So number one, it's never too late. The ship has never completely sailed away from the dock. The way that I approach all this stuff is just being very human about it. And I do this with my own kids, and I work with my own clients on this, right? Is that we as parents can admit when we maybe have handled something in a way that we wish we hadn't. And so we can go back either in that moment or after that moment, or recall a different moment and say, here's how I wish I would have handled that. Here's how I wish I would have showed up, right? But I didn't. And so how did that make you feel? And start that conversation. A lot of times parents will try to keep the conversation about food allergy reactions, allergic reactions, anaphylaxis, the panic kind of stuff away from the child. And I don't endorse that, because when we avoid conversations, number one, we can make somebody more anxious, because now we don't know what's going on in their head. We know what's going on in our head. So are they having similar thoughts, scary thoughts, right? So avoiding these conversations can actually fuel anxiety. What we need to do is talk about it in age-appropriate ways, and focus on helping them understand that we can feel anxious about this stuff and still have a full and fun life, right? And so giving them language to talk about their feelings and to talk about how that might trigger bodily sensations and all of that kind of stuff, the panic feelings, is so important. And so maybe perhaps for the first 5 or 6 years that we had our child's food allergy, we were just kind of in fight or flight, and we were just trying to get through each day, surviving. That's okay. When you get your grounding and you can get to a place as a parent where you can make that transition into okay, I don't just want to survive, I want myself, my child, and my family to thrive, then start by having those conversations and visiting those things and just being very human about it.
I was going to say, when you said, it can spur it to not be human about it.
Yeah.
I experience it as an adult a little bit differently, and that, I don't know, it was nice to hear that, because oftentimes with my family, they see how much I struggle now as opposed to before. And I think my mom's trying to be helpful by being immediately being like, oh my God, I don't feel right. Did you check that label? Can I check that label again? Which trash can did you put it in? And immediately she'll be like, oh, you're fine. No, you're fine. It's fine. And because I don't have somebody there believing on top of the panic or the anxiety, I'm trying to now validate myself and make somebody who I know loves me believe me and be there with me in it. And once I, talk that through with her, she's like, okay, let's look at the label. And so we're walking our way back through that, but I don't know, I can see how with a little. Yeah,
people's first instinct is to say, it's totally fine, don't worry, don't worry. If that worked, we would all feel better. It's okay to worry. It's okay to feel anxious feelings and have anxious thoughts and what if thoughts, right? The goal then is to notice them, recognize them. The language I use is unhook from them, and then to choose what direction we want to move in. Okay, I notice I'm anxious about this. I'm second guessing if I read the label correctly or if I ate something that wasn't safe for me, right? I'm going to go back and look. I'm going to take some deep breaths while I'm doing it. And my thoughts are going to swirl. That's normal. I'm feeling anxious. My body wants to go into panic, fight, or flight. Okay, I'm noticing all of this stuff. Let me go check that. Okay, looked safe. Nope. Okay, I'm going to sit and breathe through this, right? So it's not, the thoughts and the feelings don't have to be scary. We just have to recognize them and then say, okay, how do we want to move through this? And we need to teach that to our children too. They're going to have a whole bunch of stuff in life, whether it's food allergy or otherwise, as adults, right? Where it's this whole anxiety thing is going to show up, and we want to create a different relationship with anxiety rather than just believe it's bad and unsafe, and it means, oh my gosh, if I feel anxious and I might be feeling something, and that could just be anxiety, that immediately means I'm having an allergic reaction, and it doesn't always mean that.
Unhook is my favorite word.
Well, it's a clinical, so I use acceptance and commitment therapy in a lot of my work. So there's CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, that is one of the more researched approaches in food allergy, just in general in chronic illness, but I use ACT, and so unhooking is the kind of the lay term for cognitive diffusion, which means we have all these thoughts and we get really stuck with them, so all we see is just that, and so can we unhook, like take the fisherman's hook, the line out of us, so that we can see a whole bunch of different things, notice things, and then choose how we want to move forward instead of reacting.
Yeah, that's something with, I am no longer doing OIT, but when I was trying immunotherapy, I didn't realize, because everything with immunotherapy is just so much more heightened, it was the first opportunity that I had had to really see how unhelpful it is to not let myself notice and name anxiety. By trying to stuff it down, it actually created a much bigger panic than if I had been like, okay, like it's totally fine that you're feeling anxious. Like it's like your thoughts are swirling. I'm noticing that. Oh my gosh, it makes my whole body feel like hot and heavy. And then it would go away versus trying to stuff it down. And we all know from past episodes how that went and how Sarah had to literally fly her coop and come across the city to my coop. But I don't know. It was a terrible experience and a terrible day, but it really was like the perfect example of the physical manifestation of like when you allow yourself to notice and name how that can be the key to unhooking versus like shaming yourself for having these
not helpful
feelings and emotions. So
it's like trying to get rid of, like swim away from a wave versus just saying like, okay, I can get through this wave. And then you get to the other side and you're like, oh my gosh, I got through this. Yeah. And that can be true of an allergic reaction too. It's hard, it's uncomfortable, it's scary. It's a wave, but we can get through it, right?
So can we talk through the example that Sarah gave earlier, like being at a birthday party and a parent is like, you know, like, this is not safe, like they're swirling, like they're in the like, oh my God, the ice cream got brought out and my child is anaphylactic to dairy. Like how would you recommend, what's a way that they can unhook and model that for their child? Like, is it letting your child see you swirl? Is it like plastering the smile and leaving early and talking about it on the way home? Or what are some different scenarios that parents listening can use this, the unhook, but in this scenario?
So it's going to come down to just how willing that parent is in that situation on that day in that experience. Totally. And so if a person is able to say, okay, I'm going to talk myself through this. There's reasons to stay. My child is having a good time. We don't want to leave, right? I want them also to learn that they can get through experiences where their allergens are present. Okay, then I can talk myself through it. And I talk a lot about this in my upcoming book, is that like we need to have reasons. Those are whys. Those are what I call North Stars. We have to have the reasons, the whys, in order to stay in really uncomfortable, hard situations that are meaningful to get through. So in that experience, it might be so meaningful for the child socially to still stay at this birthday party for their friendships. And us, and using our anxiety as a way to hightail it and say, I'm too anxious to deal with this, might not be good for the child socially, right? And so we need to have those whys of, why should we sit and surf these really intense waves of emotions and stay in a situation where we feel really unsafe, right? So it's talking yourself through, is this really unsafe or is this a perceived unsafe situation, right? Like I feel uncomfortable and I feel anxious, but is this really unsafe for my child or is this just me feeling anxious about it, right? So assessing that safe enough, not safe is a good place to start. Connect with your whys. Why is it important to stay? Why is it important to, feel uncomfortable in this moment right now? And can I talk myself through that? Maybe I need to walk away and kind of just take a breath and then come back and just kind of be vigilant, but like smiling, right? Do the work inside. And if a parent just can't that day, they just can't do it, it's okay to say, you know what, we need to leave. Process it all on their own and then maybe have a conversation later, right? It's okay for parents to be honest that they're feeling anxious about something. Again, that's a way to model that, we have anxiety, we have feelings that are uncomfortable, and sometimes we choose to do things that make us feel better in that moment, which might not be helpful in the long run. And other times we can get through that feeling of discomfort, and it's not easy in the moment, but in the long run, it's better. It's better for everybody.
That was really helpful for me too. I mean, my kids are a little bit older, and I do feel like I can talk to them now, more so than when they're 2 and 3 years old.
Yeah,
Even yesterday, we were at a party, and my 4-year-old is allergic to sunflower seeds, and a couple of kids came in. They just, I guess, gotten back from a baseball game or something, and had both of them had like huge bags of sunflower seeds, and immediately I was like, oh, this is like, I don't love this. This is a little terrifying, because Ethan is still 4 and he still finds things on the ground and puts them in his mouth. Like, he is just that kid, even at 4 years old still, and because he's just too curious. And that feels really scary to me. And I don't know if I handled this right, but I decided to kind of lean down to him and say, hey, do you see that over there? Those are sunflower seeds. You recognize them, right? And he's like, yeah, I'm allergic. And I was like, yeah, so we just want to stay away. And if you see one, don't touch it. And definitely if somebody gives you one, don't eat it. And if you have any like questions or need anything, I'm right here. Like, I'll be here the whole time. That's what I did. And I'm like, I don't know. Should I have asked them to put them away? Should I have like left the party?
How did it go? Well, I'll start with, how did it go?
It went fine. I mean, the parent heard me. She's a friend of mine, and she heard me, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't even think about it. And I was like, of course, you don't have to think, like, you shouldn't have to think about it. This is not, and she's like, do you want me to put them away? And I said, no, I think, as long as, I also talked to her son who's a little older, and I said, Ethan's really allergic to these. So if you can just make sure not to ever share with him. Yeah. And I think he just kind of himself, the little boy, just kind of put them to the side, and he didn't eat them. And it went fine. Like, no problem, no reaction. And we had a great time.
So that's awesome. And a couple things I'll highlight from that is that you, what you did was reestablish expectations right there in that moment. That was being flexible. Okay, this is coming up. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling the panic. I'm anxious. I just want to leave, but clearly there was a why there for you to stay enough to get through that. You reestablish the expectations with your son, with other people. That helps build the trust that things can be okay. And then you just kind of monitored, right? And so I think you handled it really well. Personally, I think, and professionally, I think you handled it really well. You were anxious. It's okay to be anxious in that situation, right? That raises our awareness, and we take a look and we assess, but you obviously evaluated that this was safe enough, and you reiterated the expectations and the safety guidelines, kind of did an impromptu little like, hey, remember the rules kind of thing, and then just kind of step back. And if something hadn't gone right in that moment, you would have responded. Your emergency action plan. Like, we have to remind ourselves, if things don't go as planned, we know what to do. We can handle it, and we can do plan B. The last thing I'll say about that is that in any situation, we should practice perspective shifting, where we're not always just focused on worst case scenario outcomes. We also want to look at, best case scenario outcomes of a situation, and then the most likely outcome, because our mind is going to take us back to worst case. It's just going to, especially when we tend to be more anxious and we're in high anxiety situations like this. So can we at least entertain, connect with, and think about other possible outcomes of a situation, so that we're not immediately just focused on, this is going to go bad, allergic reaction, bad things.
Wow. I am taking, I know so many people are taking things from this, because I always say, like, I don't feel like I'm an overly anxious person in general, which I'm very thankful for. Like, that's not my baseline. But I mean, the tips, like the buckets, the asking, like, the whys about why it's important to stay or to work through an anxiety moment is really important to me. Like, going back to that same scenario yesterday, I mean, it was Easter. Our friends had invited us over for brunch. We had planned to be there. I made food. The kids were going to have a good time. There was an Easter egg hunt. Like, there were all of these things that were really important to our quality of life to be there and participate. So just asking myself, I didn't know I was doing that, but I think having that be a practice that somebody can now take forward, if that's not their routine or their natural thing that they do, the fact that they can listen to you say that and use that as a strategy, as a tool, I think is just amazing. And then the thing you just said too, I'm going to take that home with me too, is the mindset shift of like, it's not always the worst case scenario. What are the other scenarios? And actually lay them out.
Yeah.
Just incredibly helpful for me.
I go over all this in my book that's out in September. It's May Contain Anxiety, Managing the Overwhelm of Parenting Children with Food Allergies. I have whole chapters dedicated to some of this stuff. And people have asked me, if I'm not a parent of a child with food allergies and I'm managing food allergies on my own, is this something that I can still take stuff away? And yes, while there's a lot of stuff focused on parenting, there's like a whole developmentally appropriate parenting goals chapter. The basic stuff in there is kind of the stuff we've been talking about, like questions to ask about your allergist about assessing risk, and mindset stuff and feelings, how to navigate feelings. There's a whole chapter on anxiety, how to get through anxiety, perspective shifting, all these kinds of things. The whole goal is to really take a different approach to life with food allergies, and I intertwine allergy research with acceptance and commitment therapy research, so it's evidence-based, but it's written in as if we're sitting here like this, just having a cup of coffee or tea, talking about all of this stuff, but giving you practical tips to just approach allergy life differently.
As somebody who's not a parent, and I don't know if I'll ever be a parent, but I am chomping at the bit for the fall because, I mean, Sarah and I talk about it all the time. Like, as a food allergy adult who was a 90s baby, like, I am constantly... part of the reason I'm spending so much time and money in therapy is because I need to be the food allergy parent to myself. Like, I need to reprogram and be a kind, reliable, someone who handles anxiety with grace and with research, and not just like, oh my God, there's your allergen, run, you know? Yeah. So I don't know, as somebody who is like not at all in the parent bucket, if you will, I am like, no, I don't know if there's a more appropriate book for me to read. Like, I can't wait to read this.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a lot in there that you could probably take away. And again, if you just apply it to your situation and think about it differently too, and like the reparenting part, just sort of, again, there's talk about self-compassion in there. So there's a lot of things that you could probably use and apply that would help you approach this differently in your own mind and kind of be your own guide and your own parent through all of this, because you didn't have that.
Totally. And I mean, that's the goal for parents with food allergy kids. Like, you're raising your kids to be able to do that for themselves.
So we have to do our own work too in order to be able to do that. And I share a little bit about my experience as an allergy parent in there too, right? I share our first allergic reaction story in there right away. And so, it's a vulnerable thing to get through, but we can.
I can't wait to read it. I'm going to pre-order mine right away. And if you'll have us, we would love to have you back on right around the time that book is coming out.
Absolutely.
And to really dig down into some other subjects, because I know we've just been talking 30 minutes or so, but there is an ocean of things we could talk about. So if you'll have us, we want to have you back on EpiPod.
Thank you. I would graciously accept that invitation, and I look forward to talking through all that stuff more in depth, because there's stuff in there that I haven't put out in any of my content online too, like just stuff that I've taken away from all the work I've done and kind of put together. And I will say that it has been peer reviewed by allergists and top allergists in the community and psychologists. That's one of the benefits of publishing with Johns Hopkins University Press, is that it has to be peer reviewed before it goes out there. So it has been peer reviewed by top allergists, and I will be sharing their thoughts, their blurbs and stuff eventually as we get closer to the launch. So it is hopefully going to be a helpful book that's going to make people think about things a little differently.
I'm so excited. So before we sign off, where can people listening follow along until the fall when they can get their hands on your book?
So I am on way too many social media outlets. I make too much work for myself. So on Instagram, which is primarily where I live, I have at Food Allergy Counselor is kind of the main one for those managing food allergies. I also have at Therapist Tamara, which I just kind of talk about like not just food allergy focused stuff. I talk more about like women and motherhood and that kind of thing. I also have Facebook pages for both Food Allergy Counselor and Therapist Tamara. I think I'm on like Blue Sky. I can't remember which one I'm on there. If it's Food Allergy Counselor, it's one of the two. It's either Food Allergy Counselor or Therapist Tamara. So search on whatever social media application you're on. If you find me on one, great. That's where I'm at. So
amazing. Well, we will link them all below, and also the directory where I found my food
Yes.
allergy therapist.
So foodallergycounselor.com is my resource website. It has a ton of articles along the kind of stuff we've talked about for allergy, anxiety, mindset, parenting stuff. There's my podcast is actually still on there. There's 2 years worth of episodes, and then it's still on every podcast app that's out there. So foodallergycounselor.com is a resource website. That's mine. That's sort of my brand. Foodallergycounseling.org is now the Academy of Food Allergy Counseling, and that's where the therapist directory lives. So I started that years ago. I'm the founder of the organization, which was called something different when I started it, and the therapist directory, and it's now sort of evolved into a nonprofit organization, Academy of Food Allergy Counseling, which isn't just has the directory for people to find their therapist, but it's also bringing in therapists to help educate them and help this food allergy counseling niche grow bigger so we can meet the needs for everybody who needs to get support.
Amazing. We'll link it all in the show notes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, YouTube. And I can't wait to delve deeper into all of these subjects next time. But thank you so much for being here,
Ladies,
Tamara.
for having me. I really appreciate it. It was fun talking to you.
How good was that?
It was so good. I just love getting little bits of knowledge that I can take with me into my life. You know, after you turn this off or after we finish this interview, it's like, oh, now I feel more prepared. And the fact that she has more to share with us in another episode when her book comes out, and her book in general is going to be so amazing. Yeah, I feel very blessed to have had that conversation.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy and hold me to it to use the tactics that she gave us. I love hearing like, you're not alone. There's actual research to show this, and then giving me actual tactical things that I can remind myself when I'm spiraling out. So.
Yes, it's great. Okay, we'll stand by for part 2 later on. And until then, we'll see you next week.
See you next week.